My topic today is about the single bit full volume real-time 4D echocardiography. This is a relatively new tool for the application for echocardiography. I hope in the 15 minutes talk, I will show you how the 4D real-time single bit full volume echocardiography can be applied in our daily practice, and I hope that in the future it will be a common thing in our daily practice. It's called real-time three-dimensional echography. Actually, there are three basic modes for the real-time three-dimensional echocardiography. The first one is the full volume display mode, and the second one is the live 3D mode. The third one is the corner mode, as you can see. And only the live 3D, which actually display about between 30 and 45 degrees angle, is actually the real time. Both the full volume mode and the color mode needs more time to display. It takes about 4 bits and it takes about 8 bits to actually display the heartbeat. So that it really is not real time. We must call that near real time echocardiography. And on this slide, you can see how the matrix probe accomplishes the display of the three-dimensional image. It transmits many beams, and then it displays those information from the transmitted beams. So actually, it's not a volumetric image. It's still a kind of more complicated planar images. So, as I said before, that it takes 4 bits to really display the full volume of the heart. How about the consequence of the static image of the full volume? You can see on this slide. This is not too bad image, but still you can see some stitches over here. So this is not a perfect image, but this is already not a too bad image for adults and for children. For children who are not so cooperative as adults, most often you can get this kind of image. You can see that the stitches are very obvious, so you cannot really get the calculate or quantitate or even see the anatomy of the structure through those static images. So there is now a new way to display to obtain the full volumetric image. This is what we call the single bit full volume real-time three-dimensional echocardiographic display. And through this kind of image acquisition, you can get the full volume of the heart through single bit, through 1 bit, and all the information can be stored in this single volumetric information. So, what is accomplishment? Firstly, it contains about 50 degrees volume at 40 volumes per second, up to 16 centimeters. And it contains 20 volumes per second for color 40 degrees volumes. Both of these can be done by a single bit. So this is quite different from the past, what we have so-called real-time three-dimensional echocardiography. So through the single bit echocardiographic display, we can have the image, all the image information within single bit obtained during a single bit time, so that all the information can be stored in this single bit. And so there's no stitch, there's no bridge holding, so there's no artifact. The image quality is much better, and there's, of course, then you can see that there's no image, no stitch artifact. It's really a single bit thing, and also we can do some image processing, and we can take part of the anatomical information out and only retain the color image, while the other part of the image still present with both anatomical and the color images, so that we can see the anatomy in more detail and in more understanding for that. In the past, a full image for black and white image or for the color image cannot give us much information if we do not cut it into planes. However, if we cut it into planes, we do not have the information on the cut side. We can only have information. We can see only what the anatomy is on the uncut side. So this is very. It takes a lot of learning curve to learn about the real anatomy through those kind of display. And by the new method, it's much easier to understand. We can see the so-called clamshell display method. It can be cut into two halves, so that on the right side is the right side half, on the left side is left side half. So you can see if as a whole you do not see much thing, but after cut into two halves, you can see the internal structure of the volume, and you can understand its anatomy in a single bit, in a single cut. This is very advantageous, and not only for the black and white image, you can see that also through the color image. You can see that the color image can be cut into two halves. You can see the anatomy in color flow mapping. So let's enjoy its advantage in a patient with congenital heart disease. This is a 13-year-old girl who had complex congenital heart disease. As you see on this picture, that she had a single ventricle, single AV valve, and some degree of AV valve regurgitation. And you can see that there is a jet from the bottom of the atrium to from the bottom of the left atrium to the common atrium. So this is so-called penetrated PFO to allow the compression of the vena cava pathway out to the cardiac atrium, so that it won't cause edema of the patient. But from the two-dimensional echo, you can only see there's a jet here from down bottom to the top, and there's also regurgitation jet of the single AV valve from the AV valve to the bottom of the atrium. But what's the additional thing we can have? Well, by the post-Doppler echocardiography, you can see that the penetrated PFO showed a higher velocity, indicating that this PFO is partially restrictive and not very big, so that it shows higher velocity. And also you can see the AV valve regurgitation jet. The jet density is quite obvious, indicating at least a moderate AV valve regurgitation. How to put it together on a single beat, three-dimensional echocardiography? You can see that on the traditional cut, you can see there's not much AV valve regurgitation on this side of the cut, and you can see on the deep interior, you can see the penetrated PFO, and on the superficial part of this half cut, you can see the AV valve regurgitation. So put it together, you can see the advantage of single beat real-time echocardiography, and on this half there's not much thing, but on this half you can see where deep interior into the underside of this half, there's a penetrated PFO, and also there's at least moderate AV valve regurgitation on this collar half shell, so that through this single beat, single accomplishment of the heartbeat obtained acquirement, you can almost understand the whole anatomy of this complex heart disease. And also we can have the multi-planar, multi-slice show. You can see, evaluate different anatomy through different levels of cutting of the slide. And the single beat half volume collar pyramid, as I said before, we can keep one side with both collar and structural image, and on the other side just keep the collar image. And for the we can have navigation and with a much easier way, so that we can get any kind of arbitrary plane. You can see the